Welcome back to Update Day in Old School, and this week we have some massive changes to Tombs of a Masket. So without further ado, let's jump straight in, and for Zebak, they've raised the base hit points by 10%. They've increased the base number of jugs by 2. Jugs no longer set attack delay, but still respect it, so you should be able to pop a jug and hit Zebak immediately, but you might have to wait if you hit Zebak before you hit the jug. And now jugs roll 2 tiles further before stopping. Overall, they felt like Zebak was in a pretty good place, so they didn't want to make too many changes. Next up, we have Akka. Orb spawn during the Enrage phase will now only deal full damage to one player, and if you don't know, this is the final phase after he does the little healing animation where all the white tornadoes on the ground. That is this phase that they are associating to. Then the number of orbs spawned during the Enrage phase has been slightly reduced since many players felt dodging them wasn't fully feasible. And then to compensate this, the base damage of the Enrage phase orbs has been slightly increased. However, the max damage of the orbs is capped at 25 to prevent them from being overly punishing on higher raid levels. And then finally, Akka will change styles if he hasn't swapped for over 60 seconds. They felt that Akka was functioning as intended, but their chief concern was that the Enrage section was slightly too punishing. Now moving on to Baba. Baba's banana spawn via the Jungle Japes invocation now occurs on Monkey Death rather than just randomly. And the banana spawn via the Jungle Japes invocation will deal significantly less damage. And then the final change is the damage done by the open sarcophagi is no longer dealt in a 3x3 area. Now finally, the biggest changes we have are for the Wardens. They've adjusted the damage formula for phase 2 to benefit less from accuracy and have a lower max ceiling. The core exposure time has been reduced by 7 cycles. They've also increased the Warden's hit points during phase 2 for high scale groups. They've slightly reduced the amount of damage dealt to the Warden when successfully clearing the phase 3 skull mechanic. They've also slightly increased the base hit points of the Warden during phase 3. They've reduced the base allowed duration for solving the skull mechanic during phase 3. And then finally, they've slightly reduced the magic level of the Warden during phase 3. Tebow Price just took a hit with that final line right there. We may be a little biased, but we think you'll agree that visually and conceptually the Wardens are a fantastic fight. That being said, they felt the balance was off. As the final boss of the raid, the Wardens should be challenging and resource intensive, but during phase 2, arguably the toughest part, players should spend more time attacking the core than fighting the boss. These changes should ensure that the battle feels a little more back and forth for big groups and players with high-end gear without significantly affecting smaller groups with less flashy gear. Now for some of the changes to the puzzles. First, for Baba's puzzle, they've reduced the number of monkeys that spawn in each wave. They've adjusted the timings of the waves so they overlap more smoothly. And by default, players will now receive 100 potions from the crate rather than 20. And completing the room will now delete the regular hammer from your inventory as well. Then for the changes to the path of Akka, they've changed the health scaling of Het Seal for different group sizes. The change was aimed to make 1-downs a little more reliable in groups where there may be a big difference between the highest and lowest mining levels. Now for possibly the biggest change in this entire blog in relation to how Raids 3 are going to work going forward. Ambrosia and Liquid Adrenalines are now 1-dose only potions. Liquid Adrenaline now rarely shows up in the Chaos Pack, and Ambrosia now only shows up in the Life Pack. They've adjusted the quantity of items provided in the Chaos Pack, and they've increased the amount of run energy that Smelling Salts restore. The mid-rate loot interface no longer stops your movement, so you'll be able to withdraw your supplies on the fly. Ambrosia and Liquid Adrenaline, initially they wanted people to opt in if they felt needed, but at the high price of losing out on other useful items. Prior to these changes, that wasn't necessarily the case. Now for drop rates, they've slightly reduced the base drop chance for tradable uniques, and they've slightly increased the effect that raid level has on tradable unique drop rate. Expert is significantly better than normal mode if you're hoping for uniques. Normal is proving a bit easier than expected, and Expert perhaps a bit harder. They want players to really feel the value of trying higher raid levels. They said ultimately these changes shouldn't mean much of a difference if you're comfortably farming at 150 raid level, but you'll likely see more purples as you start pushing into the 200s. But now for a new thing, we have the Tombs of a Masket route races. Now that people are starting to get a little more comfortable within the raid, we'd like to challenge them to go faster. The Tombs of a Masket route races are a speedrunning competition for each of the 4 paths in normal mode Tombs of a Masket. Simply pick one of the 4 routes, clear the path, and defeat the boss at the end and submit a clear video of the whole thing. The fastest team for each of the 4 races will receive 2 months of membership for everyone in the group. But with that, that's everything for this week's video. If you guys did enjoy or found it helpful, consider dropping a like. Some massive changes to Tombs of a Masket. I'm definitely very interested to try out, considering the big changes to Ambrosia and Liquid Adrenaline. But have a good day escaping, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.